Welcome to Complex Kids Simple Solutions, the podcast for parents raising complex and neurodivergent kids who are doing their best in systems that don't always make things easy. I'm Michelle Shoaidi, founder of Special Education Concierge, a mom to a complex kid, a speaker, and an advocate. This space isn't about perfection. It's about real life, the hard days, the small wins, the moments where you wonder if you're doing enough, and the moments where you realize you are. Here we talk honestly, share practical insight, and simplify what feels overwhelming. One conversation at a time. You are your child's hero. Welcome to Complex Kids Simple Solutions. Today we have Cyndi Ting, and she is a dynamic Filipino American who is a mom, seasoned special education teacher, community organizer, and entrepreneur. While her son was going through his autism assessments, Cyndi realized she had similar challenges growing up. Late diagnosed at age 48, Cyndi is stepping into her neurospicy superpowers and educating others how to as well. A recovering overachiever and imposter syndrome survivor, Cyndi helps adults self-regulate to co-regulate and teaches young people to use authentic intelligence to achieve their goals. If parenting feels heavier than you expected, if the questions keep coming and the answers feel unclear, or if you're carrying more than most people see, welcome. This is Complex Kids Simple Solutions, a podcast for parents raising complex and neurodivergent kids who want clarity, confidence, and support that actually makes sense. I'm Michelle Shoaidi, founder of Special Education Concierge, formerly known as Wisdom for Complex Kids, a speaker, an advocate, a mom who lives this life, and someone who helps parents navigate it. No labels required, no perfect parenting expected, just real conversations, practical perspective, and reminders that you're not alone. Let's get into today's episode. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Complex Kids Simple Solutions. We're here today with Cyndi Ting, and I'm actually very excited about this because she's a personal friend. So Cyndi comes in with like a wealth of knowledge because she's been a special education teacher. So welcome, Cyndi.
Thanks, Michelle, for having me on your podcast. Enjoy being here. And yes, I bring 20 years of special education as an instructional aide and as a teacher, and also a parent myself of a child with special needs. So it's been quite the journey.
Yeah, I mean, I have, for the listeners, I have a core group of mom friends, and somehow they're all so awesome because one is a teacher, the other one is a special education director, the other one is a psychologist, and the list goes on and on and on. And I've been so lucky to have these women in my life. And this is one of the reasons why we always talk about, having people in your life who understand what it is that you're going through. So Cyndi is one of them. And she's probably, I think, one of the first personal friends that I am bringing onto the podcast. So this is exciting. So, the whole reason why, I was like, Cyndi, let me bring you on, is because there is, we've been going through some stuff with Drake, and there's some questions about eligibility and kind of going down and thinking outside the box on what it is and where it is that he fits. He's like a one of a guy, right? He's the only one with the variant that he has. There's nobody in the world with TBR1 the way that he is. And so sometimes it's like thinking outside the box and trying to see what it is that fits. So I think it was on Saturday, our kids were playing soccer together, and I started asking her about a bunch of questions. And she wanted to, we started talking about ED as an eligibility. So I'm going to let her take on here a little bit and explain to us what an ED eligibility means. And then we're going to go into what it looks like in the classroom and all of that. So can you tell us about that, Cyndi?
Sure. And just to give you kind of as far as my background, I have actually taught in a day treatment style emotional disability program. It was on a comprehensive high school, but we were separate classrooms from the high school because of the needs of our student. I've also taught in a non-public school setting where we had ED and autism was the primary focus of the non-public school for students that were having difficulty being on a comprehensive campus. So, of course, we use the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the DSM-5, and it does define emotional dysregulation or the emotional disability as a persistent pattern of intense, severe, and frequent negative moods, which include irritability, anger, and temper outbursts that can be either verbal or physical, both self-harm and to others. I think a lot of people think that ED is just, manic or, bipolar kids, or if they're having um, outburst or a tantrum, if it's only happening you know, infrequently for this diagnosis. Like this, it would be something for them to actually have this diagnosis. It would need to be happening daily, multiple times a day. And, for example, we had a young lady, actually high IQ, was able to handle all of the homework and things in the gen ed setting. However, because she had a hard time regulating herself because of the trauma, because of things that have happened in her perception, she we decided to go into the ED process, right, of
Mm-hmm.
identifying if this is an issue. And it's not something that's taken lightly. It used to be that for this diagnosis, it would wait till they were teenagers to really
Mm-hmm.
see those things because when they're young, they don't necessarily know their space in the world, right? So if they're having a hard time self-regulating, coping with these big emotions, for little kids, they don't even have the vocabulary, they can't even identify it. But
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, with the pandemic, we're seeing more and more kids getting diagnosed with the ED designation younger because it is, you know, environmental factors. Unfortunately, the lack of not having the social peer um, kind of seeing that interacting in school. I know that we're 5 years
Mm-hmm.
behind now from the pandemic, but it's affecting our kids, and that's why we're seeing this rise in kids, unfortunately, either suffering more trauma and then not being able to identify how they're feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is kind of new to me, this, emotional disability. So and I think that a lot of parents don't really understand. So this was a great explanation. Now, so, it's not necessarily a diagnosis because I think that the diagnoses are different ones, right? Like depression or anxiety or that kind of
Right.
stuff. Is that correct?
It can be so kind of like an autism, you know how they have the PDD and OS, right? It's the one that doesn't necessarily have an explanation for. You can
Mm-hmm.
have the ED as a emotional dysregulation is technically the I think that's what
Mm-hmm.
the DSM-5 describes it as. There are differential diagnoses within that are more specific, right? So excuse me, bipolar disorder, oppositional defiant disorder, persistent depressive disorder. And just like autism, it's a spectrum, right? And
Mm-hmm.
depending on how it affects the child, that can affect its setting in the school setting, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it's a
Yeah.
student that is very frequent in physical outbursts and or verbal outbursts, and it's interrupting, the child's ability to get information, but also putting others in danger, they're going to look at the different restrictive settings, right? And if for a student
Mm-hmm.
that is really challenging, they would then, have these discussions. It's not, like I said, it's not something that they do overnight. You have to go through
Mm-hmm.
all the testing. The school district will add in counseling services first, which will be with the school psychologist. If they need more support, like with the wraparound services, then they will put in the ERMS referral. And once again, it's kind of a long process to go
Mm-hmm.
through to really kind of weed out what needs to happen for the kid. And
Yeah.
sometimes it could even be just changes within the classroom of having, and we had talked about this earlier about giving the kids the curriculum that can, kind of stretch them, but not to the point where they're just shutting down and they don't want to do this, right? And we even see that in the
Mm-hmm.
gen ed population and amongst adults. If we're given a task that, like, if you ask me to weld something, I'm going to flat out refuse because I don't know how to weld, right? And so it's
Yes.
it's kind of similar. If we're demanding things of our children, once again, okay to stretch, but if it's something that they really aren't, or they have felt uncomfortable or have not had success in that, they're going to then have those outbursts. Unfortunately, with the ED kids, they have just either suffered a lot of trauma or some other things going on, predisposition or genetic issues where, parts of your brain are not connecting or the chemistry is off. They won't
Mm-hmm.
have those regulation skills. And so they do need those visual cues, less people in the classroom, more
Mm-hmm.
support. So,
Yeah. Okay. So, how do you get, so, as we know, we have to have these assessments, right? For the child
right,
to be eligible to for special education,
right.
we do assessments, and
Hmm.
there are 1,000 of them and 1,000 of different ones. I
Yes.
actually have a book that, where is it? It's sitting right here because I was looking at it. Where is it? It's like, oh, 301 diagnostic tests for
Yeah.
special education. Like,
Yes.
this is the book,
So
right?
many, so many. Yes.
Of the types of assessments.
Yeah.
So, as the children they get tested, like
Right.
what is during the assessment, and I don't know if you were ones that, like, I know that you probably did the teaching, assessments for them. I know that
Yep.
there's always a psychologist involved also when they're
Right.
doing this. But what are the cues in these assessments that cue a person into, okay, this might be ED over anything else that is in here?
Well, I think even before the assessments happen, it's the observations, right? Especially if we're
Mm-hmm.
going into the ED um, diagnoses, or the not the diagnoses, but just looking at the ED factors that could be affecting a child. Even before, um, if this child does not have an IEP already, we really look at kind of what gives us the kind of the red flags, right? Are we having teachers, put into our documentation, or administrators, or the student, or even the parents self-reporting? Are we seeing multiple of these coming in? For example, I had a student that literally in teaching high school, you have six different teachers that
Mm-hmm.
you work with, and that's one of the things that I pride myself on, is that as the case carrier, I have conversations with these teachers on a regular basis, and we have progress monitoring that we need to get information from all of them. And, you kind of start building that pattern, right? And then we're in, if they don't have an IEP yet, if these things are showing and we're seeing these things, then we'll bring it, either the parent can self-request or the staff can be like, hey, we really need to take a look at this student. They're really struggling, and it's not just academically, but it's, everything. So then they'll go through a student study process, and then, if the parent agrees to the testing and assessment, because once again, it's a team effort.
Mm-hmm.
And if all of that is all, we have all the assessments, then we'll pull in the different team members, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
of course, the teacher first, the teachers will put in their observations, the psychologist, speech therapist if it's needed, OT and PT if it's needed, psychology, of course, will come in, and, we'll do our assessments. Once that IEP is put in place, or we before we have even before they have the meetings, we as staff will get together, and the psychologist sends out all the assessments, to the parents as well as to teachers. We go in, and we'll even have a couple. I've had even once the IEP was implemented, before our meetings, sometimes we would meet and be like, okay, let's review this data. But we also get holistic information as like, what are your observations? I'll ask sometimes the security or the campus safety people, hey, you see the student out at lunchtime, what are your observations? Or, things like that. Or if
Mm-hmm.
we see a student that's having more, that's on a sports team, hey, maybe he's doing really well out in sports, but he's really struggling in class. Let's talk about those
Mm-hmm.
types of things. So even before we go into the IEP meeting with the parent, we're looking for those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then as far as like then going into the, hey, this placement isn't working, right? Once again, the young
Mm-hmm.
lady, when she could do her work, she was great, but then she would then get into the general ed classroom and it would fall apart because of social anxiety or things. And then you would look at those, once again, observation, looking at how many outbursts, refusing to work, walking out of class, all of those things. And then when you
Mm-hmm.
talk to them and you hear the stories of things, then that's, when we would have those conversations of, hey, I think we need to look at a more restrictive environment, smaller class settings so they're not so triggered, or have a couple classes out in gen ed and then pull them back so that they can then kind of
Mm-hmm.
self-regulate and then hopefully be successful, in the academic sense. So
Yeah. So, okay, so you get, you look at all this, you do the assessment, and you decide that this kid needs meets the ED
right,
eligibility. Okay.
right,
Then
yeah,
what does it look like? What
hmm
so let's say we're talking about least restrictive environments. So, it's pull outs, right? Let's
yeah,
go. You're gonna go into your gen ed classes, and you're talking here more in a high school level. But
hmm
like even when they're younger, what does this look like? Do you still can a kid have ED and still be in general education
yeah,
and then have the pullouts? Can't do these happen in a self-contained class? And if they do, like, what did they look like? Can you kind of talk us through that a
sure.
little bit?
And once again, it's I wish I had the visual, but at the top, right, the least restrictive environment is the gen ed classroom, right? No supports, just the gen ed class. And then
Mm-hmm.
you have the different layers of, okay, is it just speech and PT or whatever? That's still gen ed. And then you go into kind of more of the special ed umbrella of, co-taught. And once again, for elementary school, I know that they do pull out, for their RSP, and sometimes the teacher will push in. So the special ed teacher will push into the class and do like a co-teaching
Mm-hmm.
model. Junior high, once again, there's all those different flavors, right? So then you have SDC, which is usually, 12 to 20 students. Not as much behaviorally going on there. There may be a couple like classroom aides, not really one-to-ones. And then you have the SDC specialized where, like I said, the day treatment program I was in, we only had 10 students. We had so for one teacher, I had two aides, in the classroom with me. Sometimes it
Mm-hmm.
was just one, but usually it's two with 10 students, right? So you're
Mm-hmm.
looking at a much smaller class size that requires more, and that was our most restrictive. And
Mm-hmm.
then you had mentioned there was, another class that you had seen where they have one-to-ones for the students.
Mm-hmm.
So it really depends on what the district offers, because some districts, will don't have the ED capabilities, and so that they will send them to charter schools, non-public schools, or residentials if it's that needed,
Mm-hmm.
that really 24/7 support. It is very, um, once again, these are things that we don't take lightly, especially if we're going towards those more restrictive environments, because of course we want our kids to be in the least restrictive, so that they can
Mm-hmm.
be able to, access the academic curriculum, but also holistically looking at their self worth. And so, it really depends on the kids in the IEP team, right? And sometimes what we
Mm-hmm.
see too is as the kid matures, the programs are put in place, you can actually lower those restrictions, and that student can then move out. Like, let's say they're in a really restrictive, you know, 2 students to 1 adult class setting. Maybe they
Mm-hmm.
go to the SDC where there's more kids and only, there's like 15 kids with 3 adults. So then it's 5 students per adult. And then maybe they
Mm-hmm.
move up. And I think that comes along with them maturing, right? Hopefully,
Mm-hmm.
in junior high, they've learned some good skills. They're kind of, their brains are growing. And then hopefully by high school, you see a lot of changes by the time they become juniors and seniors because their prefrontal cortex is activated.
Mm-hmm.
There have been cases also, though, where a kid was doing okay, never had an IEP or whatever, but then in adolescence, bipolar, ODD, whatever those things
Things
are
start
activated, right?
developing.
And then that's where, like, we
Mm-hmm.
had it's really sad, young person, ninth grade, started the year out great, and then halfway through the year started hearing voices, right? And was really just declined so quickly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you just never know. And I think that's the part,
Mm-hmm.
as both an educator and as a parent, I get conflicted sometimes, right? When I'm in
Mm-hmm.
these meetings and, with the side of the district, depending on funding, what's available and what training's available staffing wise, there's only so much that can happen. Whereas as a parent, I'm like, man, my kid deserves everything. And it sucks that I can't
Mm-hmm.
get that with
Yes.
what the school district, right? And even
Yeah.
going out to non-public schools and charter schools, yes, they work for some students. However, just like I think any teacher, right? You don't get to pick who your teacher is sometimes in the high schools, you just pick whatever class, or even elementary schools. You're like, okay, well, you're put in this class. Sometimes those staffing doesn't match. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's where as parents, we do have to advocate and be like, hey, this isn't working, and
Yes. Quick pause here because if today's conversation feels familiar, you don't have to carry it by yourself. Through my work with Special Education Concierge, I support families navigating the many layers that come with raising a complex kid: school, services, systems, and everything in between. If you ever need guidance, clarity, or just a place to start, you can explore resources or book a free call at www.specialeducationconcierge.com. No pressure, just support. Okay, back to the episode. We're talking about the different types of classrooms, and that's good because there are so many different options and
Right,
different ways of doing this to make sure that it is um, individualized, right? Which is
right,
individualized educational. And so it should be that way. And so
right.
now there aren't very many, from my understanding, school districts that actually have an ED classroom.
Yes,
Is that correct?
it is correct because it is, like I said, I mean, sometimes you're going to have 3 to 1, student to staff ratios, and to be able to fund that, you're looking, plus you have a psychologist, plus you have, wraparound services. It can be very expensive
Mm-hmm.
to run those
Yeah.
programs. And for some districts that are smaller that don't have that many cases either, because sometimes I mean, you're looking at the percentage of young people that get that eligibility. It is pretty small.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it can feel very big when you're dealing with it, like, oh my gosh, I see it with other kids. But for those smaller school districts, they're more likely to send them to a non-public or to a different school district if they have it. For example, we had some students come in from other districts into mine because our district did offer that. We even have a school that is for the more severe level of students. Instead of sending them to county, we actually have our own school in our district
Mm-hmm.
that we provide that too. And I think county also has
Yeah.
an ED program. So if the district isn't able to provide it, then they
Okay.
will I think they have one in the county. OCDE has one for
Okay.
that.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, these are pretty hard to find. And I think that
Yeah.
sometimes, when you start getting into these eligibilities, they're a little bit more obscure, if that's
Right.
the word that
Right.
I can use, like
Yeah.
a little bit harder
Really
to
individualized.
diagnose. I'm sorry?
It's really individualized. It's very unique. Like
Exactly.
it's
Yes.
like maybe 1 or 2% of our student population. So
Yeah. It is so small. It's such a small thing. But I do wonder if there are kiddos out there that should have this eligibility and they don't. Like, because because of this, because
mhm,
it's not very normal and common to run
right.
into. Like, I wonder how have you seen this happening? Some like kids being
Yes.
in a placement and they should be in a different placement, like in an ED type of environment.
Yeah, and we've also had that conversation about autism focus, and seeing those things. And I think part of it too is that ED has a stigma around it, right? And even parents will refuse to move students into that because they're like, well, my kid's not crazy. I'm like, no, it's not that they're crazy. It's that they have a different world of looking, different way of looking at the world. And unfortunately, once again, I don't know if it's trauma or, something that may have happened, congenitally. But for whatever
Mm-hmm.
reason, their brain isn't able to feel safe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
and not only for parents but also for staff too. Like I saw something yesterday. um I think her name is Dr. Jen and she like late diagnosed, and she was saying something about it's people are saying, oh, more people are diagnosed with autism nowadays. And it's like, well, we found more stars once we had better telescopes, right? We have better
Mm-hmm.
diagnostic tools
Yes.
now, and we have better
Mm-hmm.
understanding. Yes, there are other factors that are going on, like, our what we're eating and environment and things may be affecting the pollution, may be affecting our genes and things like that. But I think it's also because we have more awareness, right?
Yes.
And
I think
so
yes.
I
Most
think for
definitely.
parents, once again, it's a hard thing to hear. Your child is struggling. We all want what's best for our kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about this. I mean, we've talked about it. Like, what are our kids going to do
Yes.
when they get older and they graduate? And we want them, we
Mm-hmm.
want to set them up for success. So, um,
Yes.
I think that once again, it's conversations, and really working with your IEP team, um,
Mm-hmm.
and just looking at what's available. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think that special ed in of itself creates a stigma, or people, and like look at our Department of Education, has
Yes.
now
Yes.
gotten rid of special ed. Like what are those
I
protections
know
then?
this
Like
is gonna be
it's so that's
crazy.
a whole other thing. And you're already cutting funding, right? The state does do the
Mm-hmm.
majority of our funding. However, the US government gave the protections with ADA, American Disabilities Act, and
Yes.
IDEA. I mean,
IDA. Yeah.
right, those were federally created programs to support
Laws.
the state level. Yes, that now there is no oversight, supposedly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so we're talking about these small percentage, these things. It's going to then be harder for us as parents and as educators to provide those services or get those services for our kids, even though, um, you know, I look at our kids, right? Both Drake and,
Mm-hmm.
and Ari are incredibly, like their brains run so fast. And
Yes.
for example, with Ari, I really pushed for assisted technology assessment, and they don't really talk about that stuff in elementary, which I get, right? And even like if you were to
Mm-hmm.
do this for ED, but because I see it at the high school and I think about, okay, what's life going to look like after high school? My son doesn't read at grade level, but there's these tools. There's spell check, and we use this ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We use voice to
Yes.
text. Like, why aren't we
Yes.
teaching our kids? I get that they want
I
in elementary school, right?
100%.
Right.
100%.
But,
Yeah.
our sons are now in sixth grade, and, let's stop beating the dead horse. Let's help them
Yes.
use the tools to unlock what's inside their brains. Like,
For sure.
right? I mean, both of our kids watch
Yes.
YouTube videos at 2 times speed. able to regurgitate and tell us what it is and come up with their own, synthesize their own ideas. Like, why aren't we
Hmm.
ensuring those things? And I think that's in any of our class settings. I think that staff needs
Yes.
training for that. And it's hard because once again,
And I think
everyone's getting
that
pushed.
that is the biggest reason why they are not using assistive technology is because
Yeah,
staff is not trained in it and
right,
they don't know how to. If you don't know how to use it, how are you going to teach a kid how to use it?
right,
So, we do have the the people who do the assessments, right?
right,
And they come in and it's my experience has been that it's so basic.
right.
Most of the time, like the assistive technology stuff that they're offering, it is so basic. And then I think about like, okay, you know, he's not reading, he's not writing, so
Mm-hmm.
what are we doing here? Like,
Right.
can we just use Siri or Chat
Yeah.
GPT to help this? Let's move on.
Right.
Like, with the tracing, with the
Right.
coloring, let's move on from there. Like, let's help them use the technology that we do
Right.
have to
Right.
help them. I'm not
And
saying give up on them on
yeah, no,
reading
no,
or
no. It
writing,
should
but
be
use
developmentally, right?
this.
They're in sixth grade.
Yes,
They
yes,
already they know how to use technology better than we do. Like,
exactly.
like
Seriously.
Ari will show,
Oh my
like that's the
gosh.
reason I watch stuff at 2 times speed now is because Ari showed me, oh, mommy, this is how you do the playback speed. And I'm like,
Yes.
and he was like 7 at the time when he showed me that. I'm like, dude,
Yeah.
seriously? Like, oh my gosh, made my dissertation or my thesis stuff so much faster. But and I get
Yeah.
like, it is important for them to still do like if they're in kindergarten to third grade, like yes,
Hmm.
learn your letters, do
Hmm.
the tactile, do all that stuff.
Yeah.
Fourth through fifth, fourth through sixth even, let's work on comprehension, let's do those things. But it shouldn't be that it's this huge obstacle for them, right? Like,
For
yes,
sure.
give them the
Yes.
fundamentals, teach them how to use the
Hmm.
AI responsibly, and because if you're going to give AI junk, it's going to throw junk back, right? So
Yeah,
let's
of
teach
course.
them those
Hmm.
things. They have the read and write. I know for the school district our kids are in, I think it's an extension called Read and Write. There's Snap and Read. There's all these different things. Even on Amazon, you can now get, and I know that I think we have in our district the C pens, which can read it to
Oh
you,
yes.
and
Yes.
it does that. And
Hmm.
my one of my
Yeah.
colleagues in the high school district, she was saying that it's actually become a social tool for her student because her when they're in group readings, her students that are in the group will actually quiet down and listen to the pen because they like being read to as well, right? I think because
Mm-hmm.
our kids are so used to watching videos and other,
Hmm.
things, they are more auditorily strong versus the reading,
Reading.
which is still important. I'm not saying that it's not, but if you
Hmm.
pair it with the audio, like that helps Ari so much. Like
Yeah.
we'll watch, the read alouds of Dogman, and he'll be following along in the book, and now his reading has come along, right?
Uh-huh.
Um,
Yeah.
but once again, like to teach that to teachers, it's challenging because they do have so much that they now have to do with all the different curriculums, all the different progress
Yes.
monitoring. But
Yes.
I think it would be helpful if we can help the teachers and the aides, like here is how you use
Learn.
it. Yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
please, because
Help them
yeah,
help them learn
right,
so
exactly.
it can be used, right? Because
Right,
if you don't
right.
know, like, I mean, I would be super I wouldn't want to use it if I don't know. So,
Yeah.
and I don't
And
think
then even teach
anybody
the
here.
parents too. Teach the
Yeah,
parents too, so that we can
exactly.
support them too.
Yeah.
I mean, I
At
know,
home.
right. And I have students, their parents, we did a math night. I did the one with my co-teacher, and we sat down with parents and said, hey, here's websites. Instead of you using photo math, right? Because that doesn't teach you anything. It just gives you the answer. Use something like Purple Math. Use something like Khan Academy. Because I know a lot of
Hmm.
parents feel like, oh my gosh, I can't do the math now. It's like it's this Common Core, blah blah blah. It's actually the same stuff that we had, but now they've put it into like if you think about math as a foreign language that you're learning, there
Hmm.
are websites, like I said, that can help you so that you don't feel like you're lost behind your child. So
Hmm.
But once
Yeah.
again, teaching the kids how to use the technology, and then we being open as parents and educators to learn along with them supports
For
the
sure.
kids, because the kids, and even for their emotions, like us thinking
Mm-hmm.
aloud, like, I'm really angry and I need to take a break before I lose my poop, right? And my
Mm-hmm.
kid, and I
Mm-hmm.
say that, I process that out loud. And then once I calm down, we have conversations. And same thing when my kids blow up, I'm like, hey, I get it, you were upset,
Mm-hmm.
and of course we do this once they've calmed down. But
Yeah, for
be
sure.
like, let's think about some other, like, let's practice some other ways instead of you punching a hole in the wall. Let's talk about, right? Like, okay,
Yes.
or the big thing
Yes.
now is that it feels like we use the 5-point scale of from 1 to 5, like one being like, it's a little nudge, to 5 being like it's a fire with the fire sirens and everything going, and giving them that language of it can feel like a 5, right? It can
But
feel like your world
yes,
is burning down, but really, you forgetting your lunch is a 2 or 3, right? Like, we can probably troubleshoot. You can be upset. That's okay, but don't tear up a classroom because you're upset, right?
mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
I
for
think that's,
sure.
yeah, so those are some of
Yeah.
the things that I think we get so lost in
And
wanting them to be academically whatever or being whatever, but many of our kids don't even have the language to name
for
those big
sure.
feelings. So,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, Cyndi, I always ask towards the end of the episode, I always ask for you to share your best words of wisdom with the moms that are listening. And this is going to be great because you are a mom. So,
Yes.
what are your words of wisdom for the moms that are listening right now?
I think for the moms listening right now, especially having just this journey that we're on, is really to sit back and remind yourself that you are enough, that you are
Mm-hmm.
doing the best for your child. You don't have all the answers. Gosh, I always say this all the time. Like, I have been in special ed for 20 plus years, and I still break down crying. I still worry about what my son's going to do when he's older.
Mm-hmm.
I worry about my own students. Like, I have students that have graduated, and they'll still reach back to me and let me know, and I worry about them because, once again, like, you get to know them and you get to live their
Yes.
lives. And I think as moms, and I've talked to their moms, and it's just to know that you're not alone in this. You have friends and people around you. Your
Mm-hmm.
IEP team should be, right? And I start my IEP team meetings like this, is that we're all
Mm-hmm.
doing the best that we can with the resources we have.
Of
As a
course. Of
mom,
course. Mm-hmm.
I am doing the best I can with the resources I have. And it's
Mm-hmm.
hard, but you don't have to go it alone.
For
So,
sure.
yeah,
Well, Cyndi, thank you so much for coming on. I love it. We'll have you back because I think that we need to talk about some other eligibilities too. So
no
thank you
problem.
for coming on. I
Of
appreciate
course.
it. And everyone will catch you next week.
All
See ya.
right. Thanks. Talk to you later.
Before you go, take a deep breath. You don't have to solve everything today. You don't have to have it all figured out. If this episode helped you feel seen, grounded, or a little less alone, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss future conversations. And if you ever want a deeper support, Special Education Concierge is here when you're ready. One step at a time, one decision at a time. You are your child's hero. I'll see you next time.